welcome to Netizen News, the show that fills you in on all the latest happenings across Chinese social media. So, November 30th saw world leaders gather in Paris for the COP21, the United Nations Climate Change Conference. During this highly anticipated two-week summit, 195 countries are going to try to work out a new climate change deal which will replace the Kyoto Protocol, which expires in 2020. So, Tucker, this story has made headlines across the world. It seems all the media's eyes are on the COP21. What do netizens think of it?
Yes, of course they do. People are actually watching the development of the summit. Like this one says that I'm really looking forward to the conference. And this guy is definitely holding high expectations by underlining that I hope things goes from promises to actions. But more importantly, people began to realize that if there is no fight against climate change, there's actually no way out for anyone. Like this person says that the reason why we need to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions is not about just saving the earth, it's about saving us human beings.
So there's ever more evidence which proves that climate change is a reality. Even in October this year, The Guardian highlighted a study which shows that 2015 is the hottest year in recorded history. However, in the face of this, there are still many climate change deniers. For example, those in the US Republican Party, like Donald Trump, who believes that climate change is a hoax invented by the Chinese to damage US business. So, are there netizens out there who also believe that global warming and climate change are fiction?
Yes, of course. We do have some people, I'd like to call them the climate change deniers. Like this Weibo user argues that climate change maybe is just a conspiracy created by developed countries. She argues that there's no evidence showing that the global warming results from the Earth itself or from human activities. And Yu Xiaohua is also unconvinced that if the polar ice caps melt, this will lead to flooding and rising sea levels. This netizen comments that if a cup is filled of water and ice, would the water really overflow once the ice melts?
Well, everyone is certainly entitled to their own opinion. Now, moving on to another decisive issue. Speaking at the COP21, President Xi Jinping put forth that although China is willing to play an active role in the fight against climate change, it must prioritize its domestic issues, such as its own development and fighting poverty within China. Hence, Xinhua argued that it needs to be made clear that although China is an important stakeholder, it cannot decide this year's COP result. The success of negotiations in the coming days requires the wholehearted coordination and contribution of all attendees, especially the Western developed nations. However, the fact that China is the world's second largest economy and also the greatest emitter of CO2 emissions, some argue that China should be doing more to fight climate change. So, Tucker, what do netizens make of this?
So, for one thing, there is slight support for China to do more on this issue. One person says that China needs to have more positive attitude on climate change, and China cannot refuse to take its responsibility just because China is a developing country. However, the majority of netizens would probably disagree. One of them explains that China wants to have more cooperation regarding climate change, but the point is China also needs to focus on its own development. Yang Shu explains that developed countries should shoulder more responsibility in combating global warming. The per capita emission of developing countries are pretty low. Emission control in developing countries should correspond to their development level.
So, as fate would have it, whilst one of the most important environmental events in the world was happening, on the exact same day, the northeast of China suffered hazardous amounts of air pollution. Furthermore, The Guardian reports that Beijing's air pollution continued to rise so drastically that it was actually 40 times above the level deemed safe by the World Health Organization. So, Tucker, are netizens worried about this air pollution, this so-called airpocalypse?
Well, this topic is really huge in China. Images of foggy Beijing are everywhere in China's social media, and Pray for Beijing has gone viral. And some people want to poke fun at the situation. Like there is a recent trending joke about a young man asking someone, "Madam, will your outdoor dancing class being affected by the haze?" Well, to his surprise, that person replied that, "Well, you see, of course, can't you see clearly? I'm actually a man." However, others are concerned about the impact of the air pollution in Beijing. Like this one says that Beijing's polluted air really makes me feel sick. I don't know what's going to happen at COP21, but the general public are suffering from the air pollution.
Well, this may very well be the silver lining of the Beijing smog cloud. It teaches us that, hey, the environment is vulnerable, and if we don't look after it, we will bear the consequences. Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.